It's been a long time coming. For the game, well, for the software, and for me to actually look at it. It's the final hours of Half-Life Alyx. I thought I'd do a video where I just like look at this, generally speaking. You can think of this as like being a book, but in digital form. I loved looking at and, you know, inspecting, analyzing the previous Final Hours installments. There's actually been Final Hours made for a bunch of different games by Valve, all made by Jeff Keighley. Ever since the first installment, which was the Final Hours of Half-Life, which came out, it was only an article online, and it borderline doesn't exist anymore. You can get like screen grabbed, saved versions of it. But yeah, there was a Final Hours of Half-Life. I believe there was also another one. There was another article, online article done for Final Hours of Half-Life 2. But then I believe there wasn't another one done until the Final Hours of Portal 2. I believe Portal 2 was the next one that had like a Final Hours. I could be mistaken, but I think the next one was the Portal 2 one, which was like this one, where there was a full thing you could flick through on your computer. You download it on Steam, and you could go right through it, and it had like really interesting stuff about the development of Portal 2, what was going through the minds of the developers at the time. And at the time, I remember reading it. It made me really want to go and work at Valve. You know, it was really fascinating. Before I ramble too long, let's get into this. I am very keen to see what's in here because apparently there's some really cool stuff. Scroll to continue. Oh. Okay, introduction. I probably shouldn't read all of this out, but I'm sure it's going to become interactive in a minute, and so we'll like we'll like skim over some pieces. We won't read out everything, because you guys should probably go and, you know, if you want to check it out, it's available on Steam. But I'll go over this introduction first. On Friday, October 30th, 1998, I sent Valve co-founder Gabe Newell an email from the computer lab at the University of Southern California. Thanks for taking the time to show me around. I had a great time. I tapped into the keyboard. Yeah, this is when when Jeff first was coming in to do a thing for Half-Life. Yeah, Jeff and Gabe in 1998 working on the final hours of Half-Life. Yeah. Oh, there's like music, there's like sound effects and stuff in the background. That's cool. Not quite sure why I saved that email, or why I kept 5 different alpha and beta discs from the original Half-Life. Sensing Valve Software was up to something special, I spent the next few months of my sophomore year writing the final hours of Half-Life, a behind-the-scenes look at the making of that game. Yeah. I know this approximately. I want to look at some of the pieces. Oh, this is the email. This is the very first email. I want to have a look at some of the pieces of behind the stories, behind the scenes on Half-Life Alyx specifically. I will keep reading the rest of this introduction, because it's only the rest of this page. And then the following pages I'll skim through for this viewing, and I'm going to go and view it. I'm going to read it in depth myself later. Over the past 22 years, I've chronicled the evolution of Valve with stories about the making of Half-Life 2, Portal 2, oh, Half-Life 2 and Portal 2, yeah, I thought it was just those two, or the other two. Now, 9 years later, we return to Valve for the final hours of Half-Life Alyx. This story details the past decade inside the company, and the decision to return to Half-Life, a franchise that seemed lost to the ages. See, this is where it's like, I'm going to be really fascinated what the hell they were doing for the last 10 years. Because there was some really interesting stuff they did before Portal 2. I never wrote the final hours of Half-Life intending to start an anthology spanning multiple decades. Now, looking back, I'm honored to help chronicle an essential part of video game history. In some ways, I feel like Michael Apted? I don't know who that is. The director of the Up documentary series. Was tracked the lives of the same 14 British children every 7 years from the age of 7 up until 63 and still counting. I've not heard that, actually. I've not heard of that. Valve is a different place than the scrappy startup I visited in 1997. Back then, I sat on the floor of Gabe's office as he and his wife assembled Half-Life manuals and dreamed of winning Game of the Month from PC Gamer. Today, Valve is one of the game industry's most powerful companies, but certainly not its most prolific or understood. The company's self-professed no-hierarchy organizational structure has led to inefficiencies and periods of creative drought. but ultimately you can't argue with the result. Half-Life Alyx is a shining example of what Valve does at its best. With every final hours, I try to make use of the new technologies to bring you closer to the game and the people behind it. Special thanks to David Clark, our incredible Unity software developer, and Chuck Kerr, our talented designer, for helping bring my vision for this Steam app to life. So they're the developers of this book that we're reading. Telling the story would not be possible without the unwavering trust of everyone at Valve. Early on in the project, Greg Coomer... I didn't realize there was actually someone named Coomer. That's where the name comes from, oh my god. Dr. Coomer. Robin Walker and Casey? Oh, yeah, Casey Aitchison Boyle walked me into a team meeting and told everyone to be open and honest about everything. Team dynamics, cancelled projects, and the overall creative process. For months, I walked around the office and interviewed the team in an unstructured and unsupervised way. Thanks to Gabe, Eric Johnson, Doug Lombardi, Jake Rodkin, Roland Shaw, Greg, Robin, Casey, and everyone at Valve for being so open with me. And your customers. And thanks to my friends and family for their patience. I oversubscribed myself by taking on this project, but Valve's return to Half-Life is something I simply couldn't turn down. Yeah, this is like back in 1998. That's funny. I hope that, no matter what, the story inspires you to see how, after a decade, it is possible to return to something you love and make it even better. Thanks for reading, Jeff. Jeff on location at Valve 2020. Yeah. Well, this is Eric Wolpow. Very young there. Chapter 1. The Gift for Burning. I'm gonna flick through this because I don't want to just read the entire book out. I want to find the highlightable points. And I want to kind of react to it. So what I might just do is I might just read this and I'll react to the parts that I think are interesting and I'll put them on the screen. Oh god. Okay, wait, let's have a look. So, oh, I didn't mean to press a button. I accidentally pressed a button over here. So yeah, there's 15 chapters. Oh, maybe I have to do multiple videos of this. But no, I'll just highlight the parts that are that I find interesting. So we got, chapter 2, The Gift for Burning. When he was 9 years old in 1998, James J. Benson would close his eyes and imagine the immersive thrill of playing a specific... Fade out. Jay goes by Jazzman. Or his dad calls him Jazzman. That's adorable. Oh, so this guy Jay, he was a fan of Half-Life 1 when he was a kid. How old is he? Because I was a kid when I was a fan of Half-Life. Yeah, so he was this guy Jay Benson, who was very passionate about Half-Life and game design stuff. I wonder what role he takes in the development. Oh, this might be Jay then. That makes sense if this is a chapter about him. I thought it looks so much like Eric. Holy crap. It's just suddenly dawned on me. Yeah. So he's working on animation? Game animation. Quote from Gabe Newell. Greatest fear most people have is being scared for the loss of their abilities. Interesting. This kind of stuff is what I used to do, where I used to write down. It was a little different, but there was a time where I was like trying to write down game development ideas and stuff like that. And basically, I had a system a bit like this, where if I like didn't come up with anything on a particular day or a particular week or whatever, then I would write, I'd write something like this in my notes. I would write like something like none, as if to like insult myself, if you will. Kick myself in the ass to say, like, do something. At least come up with something. Anyway, we have Jay's original Half-Life trailer. After stumbling through a time tunnel, James finds himself in 1998. The only logical course of action is to break into Valve and make a trailer for Half-Life, using 99% original animation, bone skeletons, models, skinning, etc. This is that trailer. Ah, Ah, I see. So wait, he made an animation trailer, did he, for Half-Life 1? It's 3 minutes, 56 seconds.
Transit morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System. This train is inbound from Level 3 dormitories to Sector C test labs and control facilities. The time is...
So this is like all the animation here is done by him.
7 a.m. Thank you, and have a very safe and productive day.
Good morning, Mr. Freeman.
All like skeletal animation.
We're waiting for you, Gordon. In the test
I'm
chamber.
afraid we'll be deviating a bit from standard analysis procedures
Gordon
today.
doesn't need to hear all this. He's a highly trained professional.
Welcome to the HEV Mark IV protective system.
All right, Gordon. Your suit should keep you comfortable through all this.
Power to stage 1 emitters in 3, 2, 1. I'm showing a small discrepancy in... well, no, it's well within acceptable bounds again.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Oh, neat. Oh, that's only a fraction of this. There's way more to this. Holy crap. Right. Nice. Oh, jeez. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff, I guess this is what you do if you want to get a job at Valve or you want to better your skills, get a job somewhere. Is you do this kind of thing. You just work on your own projects that you're not going to get anything for them, necessarily. But, you know, it's all experience. That's kind of what working on Call of Unity was supposed to be for Daniel and I. Nice. Nice. That's how that weapon should have worked.
Hurry up, Freeman! I can't keep it open forever!
That's cool. It's not representative of the game, but it's freaking badass. Yeah, well that's it. Oh, I'll pause it. Yeah, so that was like one of his early trailers he did for like to show off his like skills that he'd learned in character animation. Oh, and here's his first one. It says on June 10, 2010, Benson posted his first animation to YouTube, a 20-second clip of the sniper in Team Fortress 2 dancing to C++ music. Factories. I don't know who that is. Gotta make you sweat. Everybody dance now. That's brilliant. That animation we just watched apparently got, like, it was very popular. Got lots of views online. But apparently those videos didn't get him into Valve, so we'll learn. We'll find out what did. So he must be one of the animators for Half-Life Alyx. He must be one of the main animators. Top. Jay Benson reviews the Headcrab model. Bottom, the original Half-Life CD on Jay Benson's desk at Valve. Ah, yeah, I still have that. Wait. Mine isn't quite in the same mint condition his is. Oh, it's got the CD key on it, damn it. Mine isn't in quite the same mint condition as his is. But this is mine. I had to. The CD key's on the cover of the disc, so on the cover of the container thing, so I have to cover it with my finger. But yeah, original disc. Thankfully, you can easily replace the like plastic covers. Oh, his has a little like scratch on it. That's so common with those cases. They get scratched up so easily. They're so frustrating, but I love them because they're all that's like the era of games that I come from. PS1 games all looked like this, and PC games mostly looked like that as well. He was trying to get interviewed at Valve and he didn't make it through. He applied a couple times, and the second time he failed on the interview questions. Then he says, hapless, Benson settled for a $22K a year job as a junior animator at Lionhead on the cancelled Kinect game Milo and Kate. I remember seeing trailers for that. He got laid off. It's okay. Yeah, but yeah, I remember seeing that the videos for that. It was supposed to be like it was supposed to be a little girl and a tiger, I believe named Milo, who you could interact with directly. They were supposed to have such advanced AI, Lionshead. Lionhead were not very good at delivering on their promises. It was supposed to be like a realistic person that you could actually just talk to and they would talk back to you. And it was supposed to be on the Xbox 360. Kinect. Never happened. Oh, he worked on Ori and the Blind Forest. And Firewatch. Oh, shit. Oh, he's from Campo Santo. Oh, that's how he got into Valve. The Campo Santo got bought by Valve, so he must have got in through that purchase, that acquisition. Well done. Well done, Benson. This is one of the meetings, and apparently it's one of the biggest. The Half-Life Alyx has had one of the biggest teams at Valve ever for any game they've ever done. This is them gathering for the meeting. Trying to see if I recognize any faces. This guy's face looks familiar. I'm not the most familiar with Valve employees. Actually, his face looks familiar too. This is the final sections of like bug testing and stuff. The Monday meeting at Valve HQ. Yeah. It is Robin Walker, I thought so. I thought I recognized his face. I still think it's amazing there's a Greg Kuma at Valve. Jay Benson, who joined Valve when it acquired Campo Santo in 2018. Yeah. There's a little note here. We can tell you the story about how when Benson received access to Valve's computer network, he summarily downloaded every cancelled project and was flagged by IT as a hacker. But we'll spare him that full embarrassment. That's brilliant. Tristan Reedford, one of the texture artists probably, says Tristan refuses to play any section of the game with a head crab because it freaks him out in VR. That's understandable. That's fascinating. Oh. There's a developer at Valve, Michael Copeland. Copeland? Apparently he's an 11-year veteran at Valve who admits he has never shipped a game at Valve because his projects keep getting cancelled. Oh. Dear. Oof. That's fucking Valve for you. Yeah, I thought it was Robin Walker, project lead. Robin joined Valve in 1998 to work on Team Fortress. Yes, I remember reading about that. Wasn't he one of the developers? I could be mistaken, but wasn't he one of the developers on the original Team Fortress mod for Quake? That ended up turning into Team Fortress Classic and then Team Fortress 2. I think that's the case. I'm not 100% though. There's Jay Benson. That's funny. I didn't see him in the previous picture. I think he's being blocked. I think he's hiding behind someone in these pictures up here. Benson's doing the gameplay videos as well. I guess you could say this is the story of how we fixed Valve, Robin Walker. Right, yeah. This like process of getting Half-Life Alyx going. As it turns out, Valve has been creating over the past decade, with little of that work publicly exposed. Yes, I'm very curious to see it. Show me it. Half-Life Alyx, for instance, represents at least Valve's 6th attempt to do something new with the Half-Life property since Half-Life 2 Episode 2 ended. Huh. This is Robin Walker talking, saying some of this project was about trying to give the people who joined Valve in the second decade of their opening that experience we felt in the first. Because like in the first decade of Valve opening, they released tons of games. From 1998, when they released Half-Life 1, all the way through to 2008, where they released... Was it 2008 or 2007? When they released Half-Life 2 Episode 2, Team Fortress 2, and Portal all at the same time. Since then, the only major releases are Left 4 Dead 2 and Portal 2, and arguably Dota 2 as well. Wait, CSGO came out after that, didn't it? Oh, CSGO as well, like, is once again arguable. And then, like, the immediate aftermath of the Orange Box, there was a handful of games that were released, which, to be fair, like, they were all sequels, but they were still releases nonetheless. Gotta give them credit. But then, from that point on, it's not much has happened. So those poor people who have joined Valve since then. Yeah. This is the story of how we fixed Valve. Yep. Alright. I'm through chapter 1. I've been looking at this for 40 minutes. I don't think I have time to do all of it. I'll have to do just some of it today, and I'll have to do more of it. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, it's like a... I kind of wish you could just hit like a play button and it would just like play it through. I have to like scroll with my mouse. Polygons and Presence. Yeah, this is a cool area of the game. It's awful, but it's cool. It's Polygons and Presence. Yeah. Growing up in a town of 800 people in Australia, Robin Walker vividly remembers one daily 90-minute block. They called it Quake Team Fortress. Yes, this is what Team Fortress Classic looked like as well. Actually, that might be the Team Fortress Classic. That might be a picture of Team Fortress Classic. They joined Valve and they created a modification of Half-Life, Team Fortress Classic. Yeah. In the background, we're still going through the house from the start of the chapter. We're slowly descending into where the like boss fight happens in that level. That's cool. That's adorable. Robin Walker works on Half-Life Alyx with a #1 dad drawing by his daughter at his desk. Aww. It's adorable. Yeah, so they're counting the second decade as starting in 2006. Like, I would argue that since they released Half-Life 1 in 1998, I would argue that is when I would say when Valve came into being, even though they existed before that, of course. I would think of 2008 more so as being the end of the first decade of development. But yeah, they're talking about they've had the need to make Source 2. So where are they going from here? Blocks, wedges, cylinders, spikes. No matter what you want to create, these shapes are the building blocks. That's right. I always forget what BSP stands for. Binary Space Partitioning. Yes. That's what a map, a source map, a source 1 map at least, is a BSP file. So basically this is them talking about how they wanted to move on from the old BSP limited blocky sort of systems and move on to something more modern with their game engine. Yeah, this is a cool old shot, a piece of concept art from Half-Life 2 Episode 3 with the crashed helicopter that you were supposed to board at the end of Episode 1, or Episode 2, sorry. This is a cool looking building in the distance. Yeah, this is a classic. This is the most famous Half-Life 2 Episode 3 picture. God, I remember when those pictures were coming out and they were being shown off for being like Half-Life 2 Episode 3. And how excited we were at the time. Almost makes me want to fucking cry. It's so sad that it never came to be. So yeah, in 2010, they were just talking about here, they wanted the Source 2 to be much more flexible, of course. It says in the summer of 2010, Valve finished its first In the summer of 2010, Valve finished its first test of Source 2. recreating the plantation from Left 4 Dead 2. The never-before-seen Source 2 demo using Left 4 Dead's plantation. Oh, 32 seconds. Yeah. This is a much more advanced version, much more detailed version of the plantation from Left 4 Dead 2. And they did it purely as a test for Source 2. Fascinating. Returns to its position. There we are. Yeah, I remember seeing screenshots of this as well, and people were thinking, oh, they were gonna remake Left 4 Dead 2 and Source 2 and all the like theories people were coming up with. Oh, I didn't really pay attention to it, but it says here, before Valve flirted with Source 2, Valve shipped a new game every year to customers between 2005 and 2011. Fascinating. So yeah, before they like went into like full-on Source 2 production, I guess, well, they say customers between 2005 and 2011, but 2004 was when Half-Life 2 came out. So I would say from 2004 to 2011, ranging from Half-Life to Left 4 Dead to Portal, games like Team Fortress 2 and Counter-Strike Go were updated continuously. And Dota 2 was in production, yeah. Yeah, it basically stopped after Portal 2 in 2011, yeah. Yeah, I wondered if this was the case as well. We convinced ourselves we should go to work on engine technology before we worked on another Half-Life or another big game, recalls David Spirer? It's gonna be me, like, mispronouncing surnames left, right, and center. He continues to say, in retrospect, I wish we would have found out a way to keep building games and make a new game engine in the background, but that didn't happen. Yeah. Uh-oh. Saying that emboldened by the runaway success of Steam, Gabe Newell began to have even more ambitious dreams for the next decade of Valve. So this is talking about this is probably part of why they struggled to release anything in the second decade. Greg Cooper was one of the company's first employees. I've never heard it before. I've never heard the name Cooper until Dr. Cooper. He served as one of the face models for Gordon Freeman in the original Half-Life. They're talking about the starting of their VR production. Basically, Gabe Newell really wanted to get into hardware stuff, and so did other people at the company, so they started working on stuff like, they referred to it here, Terminator Vision, AR, basically, augmented reality. This is Valve's first ever VR headset prototype. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Like a bunch of different prototypes that they had. Oh, they're talking about Palmer Luckey. Yep. Oculus Rift developer. A little bit of a controversy surrounding that, isn't there? The relationship that some of the people at Oculus had with people at Valve. Oh, interesting. Apparently up until 2013, they were mostly working more so on AR than VR. But then it says here, yeah, I guess maybe they were kicked in the pants by other people doing VR stuff. It says Valve had initially placed its bet on augmented reality, but by 2013, Newell had a change of heart, laid off a good portion of the hardware team, and did a quick pivot to virtual reality. I remember hearing about that. Some of the people who were working on augmented reality stuff, there was like an augmented reality team, and most of them were fired. And it's like the only time in Valve history where such a huge huge like layoff has ever happened. There are people who are working on projects and like reporting their projects and getting good results were all suddenly fired very rapidly. And they were like veterans in the AR field, or in those kind of technological fields, who were like brought in by Gabe Newell himself, who had to be let go. And it was like they'd kind of put their life, they'd like given up good jobs and stuff to come work at Valve with Gabe on AR stuff, and they just got let go. And it's like, what the fuck were they thinking? What the fuck was Valve thinking? Yeah, this is the Valve's VR demo room. I remember seeing this. It seems so ridiculous now, but this is an example of like a room that they used. A camera mounted on the VR headset tracks position and orientation of fiducial markers in the room to determine a user's absolute position in 3D space. This is known as an inside-out tracking system. Yeah, this is the more costly tracking system. There's a much better system which we use now, which is the outside-in, I guess, having cameras that look into where you are in a space. This system looks like your VR headset looks out at the walls and finds where the walls are, using those AR stickers. Whereas modern systems, yeah, they have a third, like an outer system which looks in at the headset and determines position. The room. They called it the room. Valve's VR tech had something Oculus didn't. Presence. Yep. Oculus Rift's headset was more like an immersive window to peer into another world. Valve's system uses a camera on the headset and a fiducials on the wall to track the player's movements through space. The result? Players in Valve's prototype VR weren't just looking at another world, they were walking around inside of it, like on Star Trek's holodeck. Yeah. Chapter 3. What's Chapter 3 about? Well, the wilderness. I'm assuming basically the gap between the, where Valve was basically just silent, like, from our perspective, from the viewer perspective, from the gamer perspective. They weren't doing anything. We've heard about this before. All discs at Valve offices are on wheels and roll in and out of development rooms on a moment's notice. So yeah, like, people work on projects, but they want to work together. People who are like, oh, your project looks cool, I want to work on your project with you. They'll just like wheel their desk into the room that their project is happening. So they'll get all the people wheeling their desks around the office. Oh dear. Michael Abrash said in the 2012 blog, there are things that Gabe badly wants the company to do that aren't happening because no one has signed up to do them. So Gabe Newell might be like the CEO, but he's like, I want to do this with the company, and then no one at the company is like, nah. No one's there is willing. Everyone's just like, nah, we're not interested in that. And so he's just there by himself like, oh, but I want to do this thing. Because he doesn't treat them like employees. Everyone's equal at Valve. What the? I was distracted. I was reading something and I just see this like illustration by Tim O'Brien. Valve co-founder Gabe Newell. It's like that picture reminds me of the picture of him that's the Jesus picture that someone shopped my face over. Oh, this sounds interesting. Far back in 2013, hives of Valve developers began experimenting with potential game ideas built on the in-development Source 2 game engine. Originally conceived as a new intellectual property, Valve's role-playing game called, yes, RPG, it was inspired by titles like Monster Hunter, Dark Souls, and even The Elder Scrolls. Ooh. People wanted to make an RPG game modularly in public, like shipping smaller parts of an experience over time and add features. Ah, this is the guy who's talking. Tajiv Kohli? He's actually one of the people who worked, pretty sure he's one of the people who came to Valve with the team that made Tag, The Power of Paint, who then worked on Portal 2's paint mechanics. Oh, here, it actually explains here, developer who joined Valve to work on Portal 2 and briefly worked on the RPG project. Yeah. Huh. RPG, however, never really left the conceptual stage, yeah. They were thinking of making it like a Dota RPG. Single-player Dota RPG starring Axe, a character from Dota 2. Yeah. Oh, they were exploring the idea of a new Left 4 Dead game in Source 2. Open world Left 4 Dead 3. Huh. Set in Morocco. Would have featured hundreds of zombies. But it wasn't long until the team discovered the Source 2 engine was nowhere near ready to take on such an ambitious project. Yeah. Every other playtest, pieces of your base would go missing, and zombies would float in. Oh, beyond RPG and Left 4 Dead, there was another Source 2 project. We were working on a single-player game that would use proceduralism in concert with crafted experience to create something played in an open-ended way. Oh, this is David Sprayer. Yes. Oh, he headed up the Half-Life 3 project in 2013 and 2014. Oh, I see. Working on a single-player game that would use proceduralism in concert with crafted experience to create something played in an open-ended way. And then Robin Walker was like saying, what was the name of your team again? Does the project have a title? Yes, that project was called Half-Life 3. 2013, 2014. Spare and a small team spent more than a year prototyping a potential next step for the Half-Life franchise using Source 2. The core idea for Half-Life 3 was to rebirth Half-Life as a more replayable experience. It was sort of inspired by Left 4 Dead, which was always fun no matter how many times you played it. Right. Yes, that project was called Half-Life 3. The game would find a building, seal up all the windows so there was only one way in, put a citizen or prisoner somewhere in the building, and then populate the building with enemies. You, as the player, would have to find a way to get into the building and locate the prisoner. The route was naturally different every time. Conceptually, these procedurally generated skirmishes would fit in between more crafted story moments that players had grown to love in traditional Half-Life games. Interesting. Would I have enjoyed that as much? I'm not a really huge fan of just like procedurally generated stuff. I don't know. In 2010, artist Matt Charlesworth and the team did a top secret photo scan session with Frank Sheldon, the man whose face formed the basis for G-Man's look in Half-Life 2. The artists were quite chuffed when the Sheldon showed up to the scan session in a full suit and tie. The resulting 3D scans served as a reference point as a team started exploring how to bring character animation to life in Source 2. I'm assuming this is going to come back to Jay Benson at some point, because they're talking about animation again, and character animation specifically. Oh, interactive. Complete the circuit. In Half-Life Alyx, Alyx Vance uses her trusty multi-tool to solve puzzles. Complete the circuit to unlock exclusive content. So you go like this. It's the most basic. Ah, yes, yes. He's the basis of G-Man. Actor Frank Sheldon as scanned for Half-Life 2, a never-before-seen 2010 scan session for a Source 2 version of G-Man. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. He looks quite different to the actual G-Man. So yeah, this is him in his full suit and tie. Or they must have to modify it quite a bit. Oh no, I can definitely see like the lips and stuff like that, some of the details. But they really tweak the hell out of it to get it to look like the G-Man. Yeah, look at that. Look at that fancy scanning of a person. Half-Life 3 suffered from a similar issue to Left 4 Dead 3, an unfinished Source 2 engine. It was hard to build a first-person shooter on Source 2 at the time, as there was no lighting solution, no save or restore, no visibility solution. A huge amount of tech was needed, and we honestly didn't get very far. In part due to the uncertainty around Source 2, another team at Valve started work on a project with its own proprietary technology-based, a voxel-based game engine, now referred to internally as ARTI, or ARTI. This fun, light-hearted game, in a similar vein to the Portal series, transported players to a manipulatable world full of construction and destruction abilities. Not unlike Minecraft. An early demo featured a talking character named King Kevin, voiced in the demos by Valve writer Eric Walpow. Players help the king break out of prison by using their abilities such as tearing down walls, building bridges, and shrinking animals and objects to impact the world in real time. Slideshow. Exclusive work-in-progress screenshot from Valve's Arty project. Right, yeah, entirely voxel-based. Huh. This is cute. This is cute engine. Yeah. Look at that. It's very, very Minecraft-esque. That's cool. Why have I not seen this? And why can't we play this? I want to play it. That's an interesting quote. I'm sure it'll come up later on down here, but... I mean, if you know everything about your game at the start, you must have played something like it before. He's probably right, but I want to believe that some people do just have a vision about a game, and they craft it from that vision. They know everything they want to know. I mean, they don't know everything, but they know like a lot about what they want to do before they start doing it. Yeah, but no, that's a good point, because like most of Valve's games and most of the games that like I've made in my past and stuff like that, you never entirely know what you want going in. Shit, I had a heart attack. I thought I was streaming. Imagine. Yeah, you always tend to tweak, shift things around, change things as you try them out, and like or dislike certain elements. Always happens in game development. Almost every single time. Basically, what they're talking about here is that there was too many projects going on at once. Yeah, with more than half a dozen different games in development in 2013. The invisible, self-directed hand of Valve had suddenly led the company in a dizzying array of directions. Valve's diluted focus became a recipe for frustration, bordering on disaster. The company entered a season of discontent, so disruptive that Walker refers to it by a singular name, The Wilderness. Exclusive work in progress 2016, script by Jay Pinkerton and Eric Wolpal for Arty. Oh. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of like pieces of a story going on there. I'm very curious to know what happened to this project. This Arty project. They've been talking about things metaphorically, but this is the most straightforward. We sort of spread ourselves too thin technologically, and then we got spread too thin game-wise, admits Michael Coupland. Yeah. By the end of 2014, Valve hadn't shipped a single-player experience in 3 years. While there are plenty of games in various stages of design, there were no signs of one being ready to release to customers anytime soon. By the end of 2014, the Half-Life 3 and Left 4 Dead 3 and RPG projects were all passed until Source 2 engine became more stable. There was, however, one Source 2 project that was about to step out of the wilderness, that they keep talking about earlier. A demo to reveal the Vive, Valve's first ever VR headset. And they're talking about the lab, I'm assuming. Explore, Valve Time Games. Oh. Oh, I see. Wait, can I keep scrolling down? Oh, there we are. That's the end of chapter 3. How many chapters are there? 15. We'll try and get through the first 5, I think, chapters, because I've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes. We'll go through the first 5 chapters and we'll have 3 episodes, I guess, of this. Unless in the next episode I like power through it or something. This is a timeline you can look at, like if we got we'll do all 3. The past decade. So if we go back to 2007. We got the episode 2 and Orange Box release. 2007. Steamworks release. And Left 4 Dead and Steam Cloud release. And then a year later, Left 4 Dead 2 release. I forgot that it was only a year later. Holy crap. First Steam Holiday Sale, Source 2 Plantation demos 2010. Wow, that was so soon after Left 4 Dead 2. Steam on Mac. First Steam Summer Sale, Alien Swarm. Yeah, which had some Portal 2 related stuff in it. And then Portal 2 the following year. And Steam Guard, which is like a thing on... I'm going to turn the Steam ones off, I think. Oh no, because it's like big picture mode, they're interesting. Oh, Steam Workshop, yeah, that's a big one. October 13th, 2011 was when the Steam Workshop first came to be. Before then, there was no Workshop, there was no mods on Steam. 1 second, I'll just scroll up a tiny bit there. Then 2012, Hardware Intentions, Codename RPG development. Oh, that RPG game was being developed for ages. 2012 to 2014, yeah. Big picture mode, greenlight. Steam greenlight system was 2012. Huh. CSGO was released in 2012. Marketplace, the Steam Marketplace, and the first reveal of the Steam machines, the Steam box computers. Dividend 3, Half-Life 3. Oh, interesting. They were being developed around the same time on the engine. Oh yeah, so at a point in time, like sliver down here, end of 2013, start of 2014, RPG, Dividend 3, Half-Life 3, and Arty were all being worked on at the same time. And Dota was released a little bit like in the middle of that. Source 2 was finally announced all this time later. Oh, and Arty's had continued development right through to 2017. Started in 2013, went right through to 2017. Holy crap. Borealis VR development. I don't know what that is. What is Borealis VR development? And then there's Hot Dog. Is that Hot Dog, horseshoes, and hand grenades? Because I remember there was a thing about that. That's definitely not Valve project, but there was a... Wasn't there a Hot Dog TF2? That was made? I don't know. That was made later. I think some of this stuff might be talked about later. I've not heard of this Borealis VR development. Robot repair demo at GDC, I remember that. Yeah, it was announced along with... Oh, it was released approximately along... Well, no, it was along with Valve announcing Steam VR. Yeah. Steam Machine, Steam Link, and Steam Controller release came out 2015, November 10. Dota 2 Reborn release, September. April 5th, 2016, HTC Vive ships. Took me a while to get it before I ended up getting it. I didn't get it till like 2018, I think. There's like a void in the timeline. I wonder if it's because there's projects that are still like in work, like being worked on, that happened in 2018 that they don't want to talk about yet. The Lab came out in 2016. Once again, didn't play that until 2018, I don't think. Vader headset development. I don't think they've talked fully about that yet. I think they've mentioned it, but I don't think they've talked fully about that yet. Then in 2017, Gabe mentions the 3 VR games in development. Which ones? Which ones were those? Probably maybe one of them was Borealis VR. But that was 2 years earlier. Artifact was announced on August 8th. And that period immediately after that was like that's probably why this is blank, because this is a dark time for Valve. Despite the HTC Vive going out, this period here was a bad time. Because when they announced Artifact, so many people were so mad. Because it was, Valve were announcing something, and it was a fucking card game. Dear. Like, while I'm sure Artifact is great, it was just wrong day, wrong time, Wrong game, wrong time. But then in 2019, Index announced, Steam Chat released, which is the update, I believe. Aperture Hands demo, Valve. I still haven't tried the... because the Index has been released now, but I still have no way of getting an Index, so I've never tried the Hands demo. In the Valley of Gods development paused. Yep. Steam Labs. Steam Remote Play and Steam Library released. Dota Underlords released, and Half-Life Alyx release a month later. Half-Life Alyx being the game we're here for. Chapter 4. Oh. Hidden Half-Life. That's cool. The background is like playing by itself. Hello, Repair Associate, and welcome to the Robot Rehabilitation and Wellness Center. Robot Repair, as it came to be known. Yeah. Robot Repair demo. That was a huge deal. When I first saw that, it was a huge deal. Oh my god. For the first few months of the Robot Repair project in late 2014, the team didn't even have access to prototype controllers Instead, to trigger the drawer, or trigger a drawer to open, you had to move your head forward. Had to move forward and hit it with your head. Like, into the drawer to make it open. Holy shit. Oh, these some of the prototype controllers. They started with their Steam controller that they had, and then they were like added this sensor, and had the same, basically the same setup as this with something else, and then they had this version. This is the start of the newer look, and what was pretty close to what ended up being controllers for the HTC Vive. Yeah. Oh, you can zoom in. You can kind of like zoom in and out. Yeah, it's early. It's like an open version of the Vive. Except it has 2 cameras in the front. And then these are the insides of the stations that you have that sense where you are. And then this is like a very early prototype version of the controllers. Valve's first attempts at building a VR controller. This is the top. And the bottom, the initial reference design for the Vive VR headset. Yeah. See, I wondered about this. As Valve looked towards the launch of the Vive in 2016, the development team decided to follow up on robot repair by building a series of mini-games to ship alongside the headset. As further evidence of the dire state of the Source 2 engine, they elected to use the popular Unity game engine, not Source 2, to create all the other mini-games for what's now known as the Lab. So robot repair is made in Source 2, but the Lab, of course, is made in Unity. We sort of wanted to make the Wii Sports for VR, yeah. We had to ship when the headset shipped, so we had a tough deadline for the game, yeah. But that kind of shit, that innovates, that helps you innovate. When you have to have a game done in a deadline, or when you have limitations, like the Source 2 limitations, I guess, that's when you get the most creative projects released, because working with those like harsh limitations means your scope is limited, and so you can work on a smaller project and make a smaller project more interesting and better, rather than have this wide open, expansive time frame or like constraints that mean that you feel relaxed about the development of it, and you feel like you can put stuff off and leave stuff, or you can expand the project, because it's like, oh yeah, we can do that, we can add this, we can add that, we can add that. Yeah, that's why game jams are so good, because you're restricted to a time and a theme, and so you have to just do a game with that, and so your focus goes from being like wide to being narrowing right down to a little piece. And that's where you get the most like innovative and interesting games. I think the problem with that game jam we did on the channel was that the game as a liar is such a broad theme. So the only thing we really had as a deadline was time. So the game that we made wasn't the most original game, because it was just the game as a liar, or the game as a liar is the theme. The Vive, Valve's first VR headset built in partnership with HTC. Yeah. That's the one I have. That's the VR that I have. I have that, and I have the PlayStation VR. Those are the only headsets I have. A development period of 8 months, yeah. So you have 8 months to do the whole lab, which featured 8 VR experiments. So 1 experiment per month. Oh, that's fascinating. That's cool. That's a cool project. Every month, you have to finish a game, a piece of a game, like a mini game. That's cool. I like that. I like that turnover. Oh? There was, however, 1 experiment left on the cutting room floor when the lab shipped in April 2016. Oh. This is one of our experiments that we didn't end up shipping. We wanted to show Jeff, but first, before we do that, there's a slideshow, a series of mini games in the lab. Yeah, it's these are all the ones that we've played on the channel. You should know it from seeing it on the channel. You might not though, because it was a while ago that I played it. But I went through and played all the different little demos. Interesting. So this one that they didn't ship. I just read this paragraph here, or some of this paragraph. No, all of it. So this is Jeff recounting something that Coley brought to his attention. One of the items that was going to be featured in the lab was a simulated City 17 apartment building. I'm in the middle of a gunfight against Combine soldiers that run into the room. As I peer out the window, I see a hulking strider walk down the city block. This is definitely Half-Life. And I'm looking at the bombed-out streets of City 17, a location I haven't seen for the better part of a decade, now in virtual reality. So they were originally going to feature a little snippet of Half-Life in the lab. Shooter was Valve's aborted attempt to create a Half-Life themed experience inside the lab. Oh, I remember hearing about that actually. Shooter. That sounds familiar. Shooter, as it was known internally, was Valve's aborted attempt to create a Half-Life themed experience inside the lab. Instead of a rich narrative that expanded on the Half-Life story canon, Shooter was an arcade-style shoot-'em-up, a series of quick in-universe gunplay scenes, starring you as an unknown member of the Resistance. Think of it as a Half-Life ride in a theme park, more of a simulation. Right, yes. We thought we would be okay using the Half-Life IP in that way. This wasn't by any means supposed to be Half-Life 3. Yeah. It's just a little, like, gallery shooter in Half-Life world. Yeah, the shooter prototype, even in its unfinished form, is instantly compelling. It only features previously created Half-Life assets. Oh, we're gonna see it! So there are no new enemies, weapons, or even locations. Still, to the millions of fans who wanted Valve to dust off the Half-Life property in some way, Shooter, had it shipped, would have been the crown jewel of the lab. Yep. Video. Exclusive never-before-seen footage from Valve's Shooter prototype based on Half-Life 2. It's super quiet. And it's got these, like, blue particle effects, a bit like Metal Gear Solid's VR sections. When I say VR, it's the character in the game is in VR, not the player. Neat. Yeah. This is what he was saying. The premise was like, oh, there's a mouse on the recording. Great. He talked about it being like he was in a room and then suddenly blue particles like enveloped the area and suddenly he was in City 17. That's cool. That's something that didn't feature in Half-Life Alyx. That would have been cool. The mounted guns like that. Unless they did and I just never saw it. Oh, awesome. Yeah, in Metal Gear Solid, there are missions in like Metal Gear Solid 2. I think Metal Gear Solid 3 has some as well. No, it's Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 that have it. They're like side missions, or like they're not even side missions. They're just like they're VR missions, and they're a simulation of an environment that your character has to go through. And instead of it being like a corridor inside Shadow Moses, for instance, if you know anything about Metal Gear Solid, instead of being a hallway in the Shadow Moses facility, it's just like green VR walls, you know, green. It's like Tron-esque looking walls, with like realistic, like real to the game realistic looking soldiers within that VR space, and you have to like take them out in like either a special order, or you have to like figure out their patterns so you can take them out one at a time, or you have like time-based like shoot the crystals, the VR crystals things in that game, and that's immediately what this reminded me of. So apparently they didn't ship it because they were basically afraid to ship something Half-Life related that wasn't Half-Life 3. That's kind of amazing. Because I reckon if they had done that, if they had shipped the Half-Life, if they had shipped Shooter in the lab, I think a lot of people would have been fucking excited, especially if they then also talked about, I don't know if they'd even started Half-Life Alyx at that point, because it was 2016, wasn't it? But if they had already started something Half-Life in the background, they could have basically said, like, look forward to more of this in the near future, or in the distant future. But I guess maybe they hadn't planned to at this point. So maybe they were a little afraid. I can understand the fear. But I still would have wanted to do it. I still would have wanted to ship it. If nothing else, Shooter inspired Valve to think about creating something new with the Half-Life universe in the VR space. Yeah. Around the same time, Mark Laidlaw, the writer behind the first 2 Half-Life games, started work with a small team for another Source 2 VR project set within the Half-Life universe. Laidlaw wanted... This is the Borealis VR that they were talking about. Laidlaw wanted to... Yeah, Mark Laidlaw doesn't work at Valve anymore, by the way. Maybe because his project got cancelled. Maybe Borealis got cancelled and he was like, okay, I'm done. Laidlaw wanted to build a VR game, codenamed Borealis, set on the bridge of the Borealis, the Aperture Science research ship mentioned in Half-Life 2. Players would explore the vessel as it ricocheted in time back and forth between the 7-hour war, the conflict between the Combine and the citizens of Earth, and a time set shortly after the events of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. There was even talk of a fun VR minigame where players would fish off the bow of the ship. Ultimately, Borealis never gained much momentum internally and ended up in the pile of shut-down Valve prototypes. Laidlaw himself retired from Valve at the end of 2015 and now lives with his wife on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. Kauai? Isn't that a name of a fish? Whatever. That's cool. That's cool that he lives there. But also, like... That's fascinating. So yeah, it was like... Wait, end of 2015. I'm gonna go back to the calendar. Yeah, Borealis VR got cancelled sometime around the end of 2015, and that coincided with Mark Laidlaw resigning. Yeah, he retired at the end of 2015. Yeah, what that says to me is that Mark was finally, he was one of the people who was like trying to get a project started. He got a project started at Valve in 2015, and he was trying to get something done. And then when it didn't work out and it failed and it got shelved, he was like, I'm done with this. And he resigned. Retired. Interesting. The Borealis, as seen in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, was once considered for an aborted Half-Life VR project. Yeah. That would have been... Oh, I want to see that. Oh, that sounds fucking awesome. Oh? So, once again, a bunch of people started working on another Left 4 Dead project in 2015. Okay, yeah, apparently basically, Dota 2 being ported over to Source 2, yeah, that basically showed that at that stage, Source 2 was kind of almost ready for full-scale stuff. So this was like a pivoting point. And some people, including Ron Walker, started working on a Left 4 Dead again. Tired of their project names always leaking on the internet and stirring up breathless fan excitement, the developers simply called the project Hot Dog. But they decided to stop. In early 2016, I was sitting in a meeting with the Vive team as they were about to release that product, the Vive. And I remember thinking to myself, we as a team really should be supporting their efforts with a full-scale VR game. Right. So Walker was like, we should be making a proper full VR game. That was the mistake with the Vive, is that they didn't have a game to ship with it. Hot Dog was shelved, and in its place came the prototype. Oh. Fixing Valve. Technically, there's a 0-0, and we read right through 0-0. But I'm still gonna do 5, just because that way we got 6 through 10 for the next one, and then 11 through 15 for the following. We started having a lot of cultural conversations about why we were unhappy, remembers Kuma. There were just too many things going on in the company to feel like we were healthy as an organization. A significant new game hadn't shipped in 5 years. And with the Source 2 engine still in an unfinished state, the company was starting to face significant challenges both recruiting and retaining the best employees. We sort of became the highest paid blog post writers of all time. Remembers Portal 2 writer Jay Pinkerton, who gave up and quit Valve in 2017. Oh, that's Greg Coomer. Once again, it was a familiar face. I didn't realize his name was Greg Coomer, and now it means something so different in my head. The solution, the way Walker and Coomer saw it, was to get Valve aligned around one large project as a point of focus. It needed to be a project with little risk of getting stuck in the so-called wilderness. Yeah. And ideally, it needed to help with companies push into the virtual reality world. This is fascinating. This is fascinating stuff to me. I don't know if it's fascinating to anyone else. We sort of had to collectively admit we were wrong on the premise that you will be happiest if you work on something you personally want to work on the most. Instead, we decided as a group that we would all be happier if we worked on a big thing, even if it's not exactly what we wanted to work on. There's definitely some truth in that. You know, sometimes it's nice to have structure. It was an inversion of the usual thinking, Kimmer admits, but we needed to put the health of the company first, and VR was a huge bet for Valve overall. It seemed like maybe we could stitch all these things together into one big project. There was one obvious idea that would instantly electrify the troops, a new Half-Life project. Valve wasn't ready to take on considerably large expectations tied to a full-blown Half-Life 3, but the concept of a Half-Life experience within the limited and experimental confines of VR was an intriguingly safe proposition. The scotched shooter prototype for the lab had shown that even seeing the world of Half-Life in VR was compelling. Does Gabe really know what we were doing this? Isn't that true? I seem to recall hearing that some of the developers, people developing Half-Life Alyx, started developing it in secret, didn't they? I don't know. I don't remember if that's true, or if I'm just misremembering that. I remember this. In 2011, a pair of Canadians camped outside the Valve office with a cardboard sign, "Canada for the release of Half-Life 3. I remember that. Holy shit. We always asked ourselves what a new game could bring to Half-Life, and for a long time we couldn't answer that. But the idea of doing Half-Life in VR sort of answered the question before we even had to ask it. A project like Half-Life Experience in VR would also give the team a forcing function to fully finish Source 2 for the first-person action games, or for first-person action games. Whatever came after this as a product finally wouldn't have a tech risk, says Walker. Yeah. Because previously, every time they'd started a project, it's like, well, how do we do this if we don't have Source 2 working? You know, if Source 2 isn't doing what we need it to do, then how can we actually work on this project? And so they keep getting shelved. These are some of the developers working. The top picture from left to right. Valve's Scott Dalton and Rob Briscoe work with artists Bram Eulers and Tristan Reedford. Yeah. And this is them here. The potential perils of making a new Half-Life were outweighed in Walker's mind by the opportunity to start a project around a shared vision. You just have to imagine Half-Life, but in VR, he says. Anyone on the team can close their eyes and imagine that, and therefore it became a less risky design idea to pursue. Yeah. I'm going to read this part out in full because it's interesting to me. In February 2016, 4 Valve employees, Robin Walker, Dario Caselli, Adrian Fenol, and Michael Copeland, started an experiment to see if Half-Life in VR would indeed be a compelling proposition, referred to as the prototype, or E1M1, a tip of the hat to Doom and other shareware action games that were broken into a series of E-episodes and M-missions. missions. The demo was a 10-minute sequence developed in 6 weeks on Source 2 with pre-existing Half-Life 2 art assets. E1M1 was a rudimentary prototype. The goal was to prove if Half-Life-style combat, exploration, and puzzle solving could translate from traditional keyboard and mouse gameplay to the 6 degrees of freedom in virtual reality. Using the gloves and Counter-Strike as VR hands, players of the prototype explored a dimly lit Half-Life sewer environment with a flashlight. Battled against head crabs, and solved puzzles using what Casali refers to as a comically large key that had to be put in a lock. I see, yeah. And a comically large electrical plug that there's an error here. I haven't I can't, my brain. And a comically large electrical plug that needed to be dragged into a socket. There's an extra "the" there. Video, exclusive footage of the E1M1 prototype. Oh, 6 minutes. Looks a lot like the teleporting in actually, it looks a lot like the rooms teleporting. What it looks like when you teleport in the room. In VR, the VR room. The like room that super basic. Yeah, it's all like, ah, yes, yep. Ah, yep, flashlight. Like, you know it's there. You know you have to open up that door. Like anticipation on that. Oh, he has 1 health remaining. See, I would immediately throw that over the door. I would break the map. So I just now realized you had to use the key to exit as well. Ah, yep. That's cool. Ah, it immediately breaks everything as soon as you touch it. That's like what the crowbar is like in Half-Life Alyx. Because you can get a crowbar in Half-Life Alyx, but it's buggy, to say the least. Yeah, head crabs in VR are awful. That's cool. And this is the comically large plug. Oh, it like bounces around like wildly. Is it trying to follow you as you teleport? There we go. Yeah. This infinite pistol, is it? It doesn't look like the regular Half-Life 2 pistol. Maybe it's something from CS:GO. The animation's all automatic. God dang it. There's explosives in there. I don't know why I'm like, I'm gamifying it. Gamifying a video. I like that he's clearly invincible. Oh god. Was not expecting that. Yay. Oh, it's the same one. Same hole. So annoys me that they don't die. They're like, those ones are so hardy. It just reminds me of putting the VR controllers together to shoot. Yeah, that's it. E1M1 didn't have any particular narrative wrapper around it, it was just more Half-Life 2. But anyone who played it could see the product definition. As Walker puts it, it wasn't a vision of what we could build, it was more of the product definition to show that it was uniquely compelling. We could iterate from there. Right, yeah. Even though the demo was only 10 minutes in length, players were spending upwards of 30 to 40 minutes exploring every little aspect of the environment. Yeah. The team began to scope out the Half-Life VR project. They envisioned a game with a limited scope, a 4 to 5 hour experience with the Half-Life 2 world that would take about a year to develop. To further reduce the art requirements, the team planned only to use existing Half-Life 2 art assets and animation. But that's not what happened. HLVR was far from Half-Life 3. So it was some employees who were like excited by the prospect. Does Gabe really know we're doing this? Level designer Dean Tate. Dean Tate, a veteran level designer who worked on BioShock. Oh. He didn't know what they were working on when he blindly applied for a design job. Huh. We thought we'd start you working on Half-Life, Orca said to Tate, who took a beat as he waited for a gotcha punchline to hit. It never did. He's just like, wait, what? Yeah. Holy shit. Well, whatever the case, Chapter 6 looks to be a very interesting one. Oh. God in a book. Sorry, in a box. That's God in a box. You could make that the name for Half-Life Alyx. That's basically, if you have, I mean, spoilers. If you haven't seen the game, I should add spoilers at the start. Actually, I mean, if you've not played Half-Life Alyx and you intend to, like, you shouldn't be watching this video. But yeah, we'll pick up from here. Come on. We'll pick up from here in the next episode, because I've been recording for 2 hours. Holy shit. I'm only up to chapter 6. The next episode will be a little while away, because I got some other stuff I need to get done first. But I hope you guys are interested in this kind of thing. It interests me. For the next couple of episodes, stay tuned. They'll be coming sooner rather than later. If you like what you saw, hit like. If you want to see more from me, then subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.